I totally botched the opportunity to get my first Lightning Lane at Magic Kingdom. And I was like racking my brain. I'm like, oh, we spent all this money for my family and now I can't even get the Lightning Lane that I need. And it's not for the right time. It's in the middle of nap time now. And what do I do?
That is Lauren Staniszewski, who is back to talk once again about her trips to Walt Disney World, including a review of Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, Disney Genie Plus, Animal Kingdom Lodge, a lot more. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Thanks for joining me here on episode 176 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast. I think this is going to be fun. I did have a chance to go to Walt Disney World back in March over spring break. I did 2 very long episodes about that experience. We got to do Runaway Railway and Remy's and Rise of the Resistance, but did not get to do Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, which opened in May. And I have purposely avoided being spoiled by watching YouTube videos or anything else, but I'm still curious about what it was like. So I thought it was perfect when Lauren, who had been on the show last fall, was going to the parks. I was like, okay, this is your mission. Go ride this. She was going to ride it anyway, I'm sure, and tell me all about it. Plus, I want to know how things went with Genie Plus and Animal Kingdom Lodge. Also, just the trip in general and dining and some of the things that were fun. So Lauren has arrived here to give all the details about several trips that she took this summer to Walt Disney World, especially focusing on the new coaster at EPCOT. I mean, looking at motion sickness and the pre-show and how it fits in EPCOT, a lot of the questions that I am sure you want to know. So it was exciting to learn about that and just talk in general about a variety of topics on trips and getting around and how everything is currently working at the parks, which always interests me because even though we did get to go recently, we got home and I'm like, okay, when do I get to go again? When do we get to go? So talking to people about their trips can be a lot of fun, and Lauren has a lot of background having gone for many years. We also talked last year about like Disney music and her background and some of that. And I think that all plays a role in the discussion this time. So it was awesome to get a chance to check back in with Lauren about some of the latest things at Walt Disney World and what her trips were like. I'm jealous. There's a lot of fun stuff that she was able to do, and I want to dive right in. So let's do it. Here is Lauren Staniszewski. Well, Lauren Staniszewski, welcome back to the podcast again for a second time here.
I am honored to have been invited back in the first place. So I am always happy to talk about trips and talk about Disney. So anytime.
Well, what I like about it too is that you've been on several trips this summer to Walt Disney World and we're able to do a lot of different things. I went in March and we did a lot of them. But then also, you know, you were able to do Cosmic Rewind and stay at the Animal Kingdom Lodge and do so many cool things where I'm like, oh, that looks fun. So I think I'm just living vicariously again through your trips, even though I went fairly recently, but it's still getting to be a blurry memory, I have to say.
I mean, I know that's why I follow a lot of people on social media and things too, is to just keep living vicariously through their trips. I was listening back to the podcast living through your March trip while I was stuck up in these Michigan winters. So it all works out well.
Yeah. So this isn't for the listeners. This is just for me. This is for me to be like, you know, I mean, it is being recorded. It'll go out, but it's mostly just for me to be like, oh, this sounds fun. This is my hour to just think about trips, but just to talk in general. So you were able to go, you went, I believe in June and July. One of them was more like a travel planning, travel agent type training. Another one, it was a family trip. So just in general, like how were those trips or how did they go? I'd love to know. We'll dive into all the details, but how was it for you to get back and kind of spend so much time at the parks this summer? And hopefully it wasn't too warm, relatively speaking.
Yeah, it was definitely warm. It was particularly when the June trip. Well, both trips were very different because the June trip, it was pretty much, it was me and my mom came with me just to keep me company, but it was primarily an adult trip. It was me with thousands of other travel professionals, and we were talking shop, but also getting to experience the parks. And it was the tail end of Flower and Garden Festival. So we got to do some of those things. We got to go on Cosmic Rewind, which was amazing. Was hoping I could get on Ratatouille for that June trip, but didn't end up having enough time to do it with all of the other training things that were going on. But a very different feeling trip overall compared to my July trip, where that was for me and my family. I mean, that was me and my 2 daughters, my husband, my parents. We got a 2-bedroom villa, Animal Kingdom Lodge, just to go and finally have their first trip that they should hopefully remember for their lives. So both trips were very amazing, but very different dynamics overall and goals for each trip as well.
So what's it like when you're going to, and this is me having no idea, when you're going there like as a travel professional, and then like how does that get set up? Or are you going and seeing all the resorts? Is it more structured like in terms of everything you do, or is there still a lot of flexibility in what you're doing?
Well, the program that I attended was with Academy Travel. That's the agency that I'm affiliated with. And the program had a pretty balanced amount of structure, meetings and things where we were working with professionals from Disney Institute, for instance, that were talking about some of their trainings and their business practices, and having large meetings to talk about different products and things to come. We were really fortunate to have the performers who do the new Enchantment, the song for the new Enchantment show at the Magic Kingdom, came and did a live performance for us as one of the things that we did. But it was learning a lot more about products and things that Disney offers that we can share with other people. It wasn't as much a family geared trip like my July trip was. So we had a good balance of meetings and business, but we also got to do things with that first trip where, your standard guest might not get to do. For instance, they opened Galaxy's Edge for us at 7 a.m. and we got to have a breakfast buffet in Docking Base 9 there, 7. Don't take my Disney card because I can't remember exactly.
Docking Base 7.
Docking Base 7. Thank you. I knew it was an odd number for some reason. I just couldn't remember which one. But they opened that up for us at 7 a.m. and we got to take pictures of Galaxy's Edge with nobody in it. So we got just some amazing shots of even the park in general. When you're first walking in, you see Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway now, and we got shots without people in it. And you're walking into Galaxy's Edge, and you can get the Millennium Falcon without hordes of people standing in front of it, all trying to get their pictures done too. And that was nice that we also got to sample some of the original food offerings that are in Galaxy's Edge for breakfasts as well. So another thing that we got to do with that travel agent trip was we were at Indiana Jones, and they did a little private showing of the first part of the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular for us. But when they pulled the walls away, they revealed tables and a huge buffet of food, and it was a giant party all on the floor in the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular. It almost felt like a wedding reception. We had a DJ, and we had jugglers and a sword swallower and a henna artist, and Mickey and Minnie in their safari outfits like Indiana Jones style that were taking pictures with everyone. It was very cool to kind of get some of those behind the scenes things as a part of that trip as well.
Well, I would love to say they do that for the Tomorrow Society podcast when I go there. They just pull everything out and it's like, Dan, we want you to enjoy your trip. Here's a buffet. And, the sword guy just follows me around. I don't know what's happening there, but that sounds awesome. Yeah. And that's the thing with a lot of those big areas is it's always the trick, especially to be like, I don't know how I'm ever going to get a picture. Like that one guy will never step away from Spaceship Earth. Can he please move to the right or something? So he just follows me around. But regardless, I would love to talk more about some of the specifics, especially your family trip, because I know, there's some things that I did or didn't do, but I know just up front, I saw that you used the Sunshine Flyer, which, Magical Express is gone. I don't totally understand why, but I get it. But so how did that work out though? Because I'm curious, we drove down the last time, so I haven't gone and flown in and tried to use that, or there's another one from Mears, and this is the one that looks kind of like a train. But how did that compare beyond just it costs money? How did it compare to Magical Express in terms of how everything worked?
I actually had the opportunity to do both Mears Connect and Sunshine Flyer. I did the Mears Connect for my June trip, and then I did Sunshine Flyer for the July trip because I wanted to kind of just try both and see how they worked. Mears Connect reminded me a whole lot of Magical Express, just without so much pixie dust. It was much more of a, you go, and they have all the lines and queues set up the same way that they had with Magical Express before. It really does kind of look and feel like Magical Express. They just don't have all of the Mickey cartoons, and the cast members don't have the hands, and the nuts and bolts of it are all the same. I will say what I really enjoyed about Sunshine Flyer, I, coming from Michigan, go through Detroit, which is a Delta hub. Whenever I fly down to Orlando, I'm almost always flying Delta. Well, the nice thing about Sunshine Flyer compared to Mears is that whenever we did Mears and Magical Express, the location, so you have to get your luggage on one side of the terminal, and then you have to haul it all the way across in order to get to Magical Express or to Mears. But Sunshine Flyer is literally underneath where you get your luggage for Delta. So one of the, whatever luggage carousel you're at, you take the elevator, you go down, and the check-in desk is literally right as you walk off the elevator. It could not be any easier just because it's on the opposite side of the terminal like that. So for me, coming in with Delta, being able to get my luggage and not have to haul it all the way down, that was a nice touch. It was a lot easier to do, especially with my family when I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and 2 grandparents, as well as myself and my husband. We're managing a lot of luggage. So that was really, really nice. I also really appreciated the touches and the services. I mean, Sunshine Flyer, everybody was in the railroad costumes. Everybody was very friendly. We walked in and checked in, and they instantly gave my girls little conductor's hats and wanted to take our picture in front of the bus. And so it kind of felt like it had some of that Disney customer service. One of the reasons that, really got into Disney in the first place when I started vacationing down there, it was nice. The con I will say about Sunshine Flyer was that they didn't have any indoor waiting area. So when you go and you check in, it's pretty much all outside. Now, the fortunate thing is we didn't have to wait too long outside. We were only outside for maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and it felt less because of the interactions with the cast members and getting to talk and getting the pictures and whatnot. By the time we did all of that, then they called up our name and said, okay, here you go. And then we were on the bus and it was air conditioned again and all was well.
Well, that's good that it wasn't too long. I mean, with Magical Express, when we did it, you obviously weren't lugging your luggage, but even when we used to have strollers and everything, and we didn't fly Delta, that walk all the way down there, I mean, that's a long walk. It doesn't feel bad when there's no, when you're just walking and everyone can walk, but oh boy, that's a long walk. So I mean, the fact that for Sunshine Flyer, that you're not having to, and now having the luggage, you're not having to go that way. It's a nice touch. I can see it. I don't know when we would be able to use it, but I know a lot of people are having to make this decision of like, do we take one of those? Do we rent a car? Do we Uber, Lyft, whatever, all the different options. Right. So it's cool. Well, another big thing about the trips is, of course, Disney Genie Plus. I'm curious for you. For me, I found that it worked mostly well for us if you set aside a few of the kind of irritants of the waking up and all that. But I'm curious for you, probably more on your family trip because the other trip was very different. But on the family trip, how did it work or how much did you use it? I'm always curious when everyone takes a trip, like, okay, because I've heard like a wide range. Some people say it worked great. Ours was more on the positive side overall, but other people have had just very challenging experiences. So I'm curious.
I guess for our family trip, I would say it was kind of a break even. We used it at Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. We opted to not use it at EPCOT and not use it at Animal Kingdom. A lot of that had to do with the fact that there were 6 of us. She was 2 when we traveled, so my 2-year-old didn't actually need a ticket. But that kind of adds up when you've got 5 people that you're paying Genie Plus for each day that you want to use it, especially with having the 2 little ones and deciding that with as hot as it was and with our kids as young as they were, a midday break was essential. We had to go back to the resort and get in air conditioning and or pool time and nap time just so we could enjoy the rest of our trip. I mean, it was an investment in making sure that the time that we were out in the parks, we were going to enjoy it. Almost our EPCOT day, I kind of wish that we did do Genie Plus. I almost wish that I had, just because the rides that my daughters were really interested in, Ratatouille and Frozen, if we had done Genie Plus, we probably could have gotten on them a couple of times instead of just once. Early park entry was huge, though, for us. And I think you have to kind of, if you're talking about the value of Disney Genie Plus, you have to balance how you experience the parks. If you are a late sleeper, then I think Genie Plus is essential because you got to stack your lightning lanes so you can go back and not have to worry about long lines for later in the day. But if you're an early riser, it might be worthwhile to really take advantage of that early park time before the crowds get there. You might be able to accomplish a whole lot before you would even need the lightning lanes to kick in. The lines become long enough that you're balking and you wouldn't go and wait in a standby line to use them in the first place. The thing that about Genie Plus that I wish I had done differently was the first time I tried to use it, I didn't do a speed test to see what was faster, whether it was Disney's Wi-Fi or my cell service. And I totally botched the opportunity to get my first lightning lane at Magic Kingdom. And I was like racking my brain, like, oh, we spent all this money for my family and this, now I can't even get the lightning lane that I need. And it's not for the right time. It's in the middle of nap time now. And what do I do? And so that was frustrating. I will also say during my family trip, they made a change to Genie Plus where you can get the lightning lane, but they don't show you the time that the lightning lane is for. And that also really bothered me because I'm trying to plan our day around nap time and that break time, and I can't even do it because they won't show me the time that they're giving me. That was frustrating.
It's so weird because, when I went in March, they would show you the times, but then what got me, this was spring break, was it kept changing where I would say, I've got 10:30, this is perfect. We did this the first day. It was like, I forget I was trying to buy Ratatouille because you had to buy Ratatouille at the time. And it was like 10:30 and then I clicked on it. And by the time I got it, it was 3:30 and I was so mad. So now, not with the purchases, with the other ones, the fact that they don't show it, I believe, for the first 30 minutes, they don't show you the times for the day. I'm like, that's worse. That's not better. That's worse than before. Yeah. It's like they were trying to mask the fact that the times in that early 30 minutes, the times jump really fast. So they didn't want you to have a time that, like, it says noon and you click it and it's 3. So then it's a mystery, which, like you said, but in general, I found with our family, I get up early, everyone else does not. So we got Genie Plus every day because if I said, hey, let's go 30 minutes before or more than 30 minutes to get there before it opens because we were at the resort, they would look at me like I was insane. So we were doing the weird 10:30 till close kind of days. They were older. So Genie Plus was necessary because we weren't going to say Ratatouille and Frozen were 150 minutes. And I was like, oh no. no. We're not doing that. So it worked out okay. But yeah, so that's a great point, I think. On the 2 days you went, especially Hollywood Studios, because that one is really challenging, did it end up working okay? Were you able to do a decent amount? Because I know you're going, I mean, July is not as crowded as spring break, especially lately. Was it helpful, especially in those parks when you used it?
It was. I will say with Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom, I almost feel like you cannot not have Genie Plus. If you really want to get the most done during your time in those parks, you really need to have it. The nice thing about Hollywood Studios, the day that we went with my family, my 2-year-old was super overtired, and my 5-year-old, soon to be 6-year-old, was just starting to get into rides. We're warming up. We've done 2 days of parks already, and we're going to Hollywood Studios, and she's getting brave enough and wanting to start doing some of the bigger rides. What we actually did that worked out super well was I was able to get a lightning lane for my husband, my dad, and my daughter for Slinky Dog instantly. And then I was able to get another lightning lane for myself and my 2-year-old and my mom. Well, my 2-year-old didn't have a ticket, but for me and my mom, and then by extension, my 2-year-old, for a little bit later. So one half of our family was able to get into the park super early and was able to do everything in Toy Story Land while we were letting my 2-year-old sleep a little bit more. And then we joined them, used our lightning lane, and then we were able to all reconvene together again.
Well, that's great. Yeah, because you were able to kind of do that based on the trip versus like, I think FastPass Plus has had its benefits too. But if you were planning, you wouldn't know 60 days out, like, on that day where she's going to be more tired or whatever. So I guess that is a positive of having it be day of, because it did allow more flexibility. And I'm glad it worked out, because the flip side would have been if you tried to do that and then there was nothing, or you had to do it yourself at 9 p.m. or something. So I'm glad glad the system worked. I think that's how they hope it works, actually.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's always this ideal of this is how we hope people are going to use it. And then life happens, life finds a way, as Ian Malcolm would say. And, things happen and crash the system one way or another. So we were very fortunate that it happened to really work well in our favor for that day. And if we were looking to do things like Rock and Roller Coaster or Tower of Terror, though, that would have thrown another kink into it. I mean, the rest of our family wasn't interested in doing those things because of their ages and, not being tall enough. But I can see where if you've got a family that is of a little bit older kids that are looking to do everything in the park, that would be really challenging to do, because you pick one, and if you don't get on that really early lightning lane, then all of a sudden now that 2-hour rule kicks in and there's hardly anything left.
Yeah, that's what we ran into, where it was like they really wanted to do Runaway Railway, which I know is not as popular as Slinky Dog, but if I had done Slinky Dog first, they wouldn't have got Runaway Railway 2 hours later because it was so busy. So we just said, we're just going to do that, Runaway Railway, and then by the time we came around, it was like Toy Story Mania. I mean, even like Tower and Rock and Roller Coaster, which they didn't really want to do, but because they're still kind of not big looping coaster people, I would do it. So on those days, it was like you get one for sure choice, and then your second choice is okay, and then you're basically looking at like Star Tours, which I like Star Tours, but
right.
I know it gets better now, but it's a challenge there. I think that's the park where it's just kind of like, I hate to say, you have to go 2 days, but if you're not going early or trying to sneak in something at 9 p.m., it's a challenge to do all the big ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious too for you, because you were talking about having a break and doing all those things, where I know you were staying at Animal Kingdom Balad. How did you end up traveling back and forth? Because I asked partially, not to be negative about it, but I have heard the buses during the day can be a little hit or miss. So I wasn't sure if you were doing buses or Uber or minivans, which are back now, or driving. I mean, what did you use and how did it end up working?
Well, we actually did end up using the buses quite a bit, mostly because my mom was in a scooter for mobility reasons. So between that and having the stroller, the bus was really the best option. Now, I did learn, because they were just starting to bring the minivans back during that trip too, that apparently you can get a minivan that will hold a scooter as well as a stroller, and it costs the same as any other minivan would. So you can get a minivan that will help you transport some of those larger pieces of equipment. You're still going to pay the fee that the minivan is, which is not cheap. But I had never even thought of that as even an option, because originally I was thinking about Uber too. And I'm like, oh, well, we can't move the scooter that way. We're not going to be able to get, or it's not going to be big enough to hold the stroller and the scooter. That was one of those things I was actually surprised to learn, because we did end up doing a minivan once or twice on our trip, partly out of convenience and partly out of time necessity, because we ran into another bus issue. For the most part, during the day, we found that the buses worked really well for Animal Kingdom Lodge. They weren't terribly hung up, although you still had, a 20-minute wait from time to time. It wasn't anything like later in our trip where we were at Animal Kingdom Lodge and we waited over an hour for a bus to Disney Springs, and I was livid at that point. So during the day with the breaks, fortunately, throughout the week, everything worked really well for us, and we were able to just use the buses to get back and forth.
That's a good point about the minivans too, because I've always thought, that price, it's just too much, like really. But when you start to think about things like, I've heard plenty of stories about, we were trying to just go back to a resort, or we were trying to park hop, and it was like, or get an ADR for a resort or whatever. And it's like, really? It took this long? So, I just think sometimes during the day they don't do as much, or it's just, so that's a helpful tip though, because you start to quantify the money and the time. And like you said, waiting an hour for Disney Springs, there's a point where it's like, okay, this is too much. What can I pay for someone to just drive me there, basically?
Right.
I'm curious too, because I feel like, just judging by some of your, how you typically do trips and being somebody that's now like travel professional, you're probably trying to try new things. So were there any meals on your trip that were particularly great or memorable, whether it's at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, which has great restaurants, or maybe somewhere else that really stood out?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we tried to do a mix of favorites as well as new when we did our family trip. And Boma is one that we've been to before, but it has been years since we did the dinner. So we did the dinner at Boma was actually our first night. We flew in. We had some flight delays getting down there, which was frustrating, but we finally made it. We got checked into our room. We didn't have any other plans for that day other than to get settled in at the room, maybe check out the pool and go to dinner at Boma. So we went to dinner and thoroughly enjoyed that. It had been years since we had that. And there was a curry stew there that was just phenomenal. It was really, really delicious. Another new meal that we did on the trip that was really good was Cinderella's Royal Table. I had never been. I've been to Disney over 25 times, almost 30 times now. And it felt like the right time to do this for the first time with my daughters. This was their first trip that they will even remember. I went with one when she was 14 months and we did the marathon, and I went with the other when I was pregnant with her. But this was the trip, where they're finally old enough to remember and talk about it. Our first full day when we did the Magic Kingdom, we hired a fairy godmother in training because Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique is still not open yet. And they came and did the princess makeovers right in the room. And then we went and had a little photo session, and we went into the castle and had lunch. And it was very pricey, but it was very good. And to see my kids' faces to meet Cinderella and then go up that winding staircase that takes you and you see the windows and everything. It was a very cool setting. And the food was better than I was expecting it to be. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. And I had this tangled pasta, which was a pasta with pesto and grilled chicken. And it was amazing. It was really, really lovely. I was not expecting the chicken to be as moist and as flavorful as it was. My husband had I think it was a pork tenderloin. It was Aladdin based, like a magic carpet, and it almost had Middle Eastern flavors to it as well. And he also raved about it and said that it was a really excellent meal. the thing about the meal, the food wise, that was the most magical per se, was there was a special 50th anniversary dessert where it's a white chocolate slipper that's encased in a dark chocolate sphere. And the waiter comes and pours this caramel sauce and it melts the dark chocolate away to reveal the slipper on the inside. And not only was it very visually cool to watch, but it was really darn good. It had all different kinds of chocolate, caramel, some fruit in there. It was very tasty. So I really enjoyed Cinderella's Royal Table as well.
Yeah, I've never been there because, again, the kind of my thought was always, it'd be very cool to see. But like you said, the food, I was like, it's really expensive. I mean, I'm sure it just probably, if I just tried to guess what it was, it's probably more. I'm not going to do that. But just in general, the food, I feel like my thought would be, well, you're a captive audience. They don't really need to worry about the food. It's different than somewhere like Boma. They have to make it a destination beyond just the people in the resort, which I've been to Boma only for breakfast, and it's been awesome. But I'm glad to hear that was good because, yeah, I mean, we've done a few character meals, but my thought is always kind of like, especially because the ones we've done have been buffets and just, I mean, I think most of them are. That one in particular always just seemed like, I just feel like, I was like, how is that going to be worth it? But it sounds like with some of the cool experiences, it was worth it.
Yeah, I think when you combine it with having the kids and just the whole package of the experience, it was excellent. I don't know if I would ever pay to do it again because the food was good. But I feel like you can find excellent food many places. But for that nostalgia factor and it being something that none of us had ever done before in any of our trips together, to have that memory of us creating a first time for all of us together, it was really special.
That sounds awesome. Well, I have to ask you about one of the things that I was not able to do, which you referenced earlier, because it wasn't open, not because it's Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, which opened up, I believe, in May and is the newest coaster that I feel like Disney's been talking about it for like 12 years, though I know it's been like 3 or something. But I am curious for you, because I know you were able to do it. What are your overall thoughts about it? We'll get into some of the specifics, but just in general, I mean, what do you think of it?
I will say that I really enjoyed it. I was nervous going in because I tend to side on the side of motion sickness sometimes. And I've heard a lot of people talk about motion sickness and not feeling the greatest after the ride. So the first time I went on the ride in June, I was prepared. I had the Dramamine, I had the C-bands on my wrist. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I ended up really enjoying it. And it did not make me sick at all. So when I went on it the second time, I felt like I actually enjoyed it more the second time because I had worked up so much in my mind that, oh God, I'm going to get sick. This is not going to be pretty. I'm going to say that I did it one time and then that's going to be it. But the second time I was actually able to relax and let loose and enjoy it. And it was a lot of fun. It was a really enjoyable ride. I really appreciate the technology that's involved on the ride and everything that they do to make that experience come to life. I could still argue about whether or not I think EPCOT's the right place for it, but all things considered, the ride itself was a lot of fun, and it's one that I would certainly go back and ride again.
So I'm curious, too, about it's so big where, I mean, the pre-show rooms are basically like in the building that was the Energy Pavilion, which was also very big, and this is much larger. So, I mean, how is the whole, the setup for it? Because I've seen the video a little bit. I have not watched the YouTube video because I try not to be spoiled by these things, but I've seen clips of Peter Quill kind of making weird attraction references and seeming very awkward. But I'm curious overall, how does that set it up? Is it because, the best Disney attractions do a really good job of and these rooms are massive. So, I mean, do those things set it up well, at least? Or, were you able to go through that given that maybe you were going through kind of the lightning lane or something?
I've now ridden it 3 times total between the 2 trips that I was on. And twice I did the individual lightning lane. So I didn't get to see any of the pre-show, essentially, because when you do the lightning lane, you go through the planetarium area in the very first room, and then it's pretty much do not pass go, just go right into the pre-show area where they would start walking you through all the videos and the storyline to the ride. But the one time that I did go through the virtual queue, and you do go through the pre-show stuff, I'll say they had a lot of little artifacts, and it was entertaining. It wasn't quite filled to the extent that they try to claim that this is the first other planetary pavilion in EPCOT. So when you're walking through the China pavilion and you see all these artifacts and it's really full and you get to read some of the informational boards about it, you can tell that they tried to make it that way, but at the same time, they are trying to move you through this line. They don't want you to stand around and look and read. So there isn't quite so much reading as there is things to look at, like dioramas or other video boards. The time that we did go through the virtual queue, the line was actually moving to the point where I almost wished it had gone a little slower, just so I could actually see some of the details and things that were obviously built into it. Again, you could tell they're trying to move people through the line. They're trying to get everybody on the ride and get as many people on it as possible. Maybe it'll be a little bit more entertaining when you actually get the time to look at it and process it a little bit more. For my experience, I didn't get as much time as I might have liked to actually get the pre-show, because it felt because the line was moving so much, it almost felt a little forced.
Yeah, because they're thinking about it like, people want to get on the ride. We got to get people through however many people per hour, which generally I appreciate. But I know in a case like that with something new, like for me with Flight of Passage, I've never seen the queue because I always do the fast pass and then now individual lightning lane. So I've seen that one hallway with the concrete, but that's about it. But again, how much do I want to experience it? Because that one, when we've gone, has been so long. But in this case, I think it would be kind of cool. But so you mentioned you got the individual lightning lane twice and the virtual queue. I know now it's been open for longer, but I mean, was it very challenging to get those? Or were you able to just kind of do that fairly easily?
Well, we definitely made it a focus because we didn't buy Genie Plus the day we went to EPCOT. The virtual queue for me and my husband was pretty much it, because we knew that the girls and the grandparents were going to go back. So we tried to just time it for a break in the middle of the day. And we got really lucky that the virtual queue happened to come up around, 1 or 2 o'clock, which by that point they had already started heading back to the resort. So we just stayed in the park and we did our virtual queue. And then we partook in Food and Wine Festival after that and just waited for the rest of the family to come back.
Well, cool. Well, one other question about it. You mentioned it, again, I kind of share, and I try not to be too like, it doesn't fit in EPCOT. But again, I feel a little bit like that, but I mean, I can't help it. I went there when I was a kid. But I mean, just speaking in terms of like the pavilion, because it's sitting there, where energy used to be near Mission Space, and then there's Test Track, and then there's the possible play pavilion sometime in our lifetime. But how does it fit? Just like, setting aside the other World Showcase and all that stuff, weird stuff, but how does it feel in that area with everything else around it?
It feels really cool. It does have the look. Really, you only really notice the old previous building that used to be the Universe of Energy. The rest of it is built so far back and is painted with their special shades to that it is really effective that you see the building and then you see the massive spaceship right in the front. And it's cool because you walk through that one corridor and you've got Guardians, and then they don't want you to see Wonders of Life, aka the play pavilion, but you still kind of see it. It's very comparable to Mission Space, even with the large planet that they have in the very center of that pavilion. So you kind of see the spaceship, and then you see Mission Space and the large planet in the center of it. When you look at it comparatively across that half of world, I forget what world that is.
World Discovery. Yes.
Discovery, yeah. When you look across World Discovery, I will say just looking at the fronts of the building and the area, it does seem to fit in really well. And it looks beautiful at night, especially with Spaceship Earth. And I love the new glow up package that Spaceship Earth has gotten. It's absolutely stunning. So that I appreciate the aesthetic from the outside, and it does look like it fits aesthetic wise.
Well, that's good to hear. For me, even when I went, there was still more construction walls around it. And I know there still are on the other side with Journey of Water, but they're getting there. They're slowly getting there. And I feel like whenever they add that, they're now calling it like Communicore entertainment area behind Spaceship Earth, and Journey of Water opens hopefully relatively soon. The area should look cool. So I appreciate that regardless of how much I really believe in the Otherworld Showcase. Yeah, which I'm just like, they really don't say that anymore, Disney. Please don't. Just set that aside. It doesn't work.
Right.
I want to ask you too, this is the vicarious part. You stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. You stayed in a 2-bedroom villa at Kidani Village, which I've stayed in a villa at Alani, which was awesome. But when we've gone to Animal Kingdom Lodge, we've typically stayed just like in a Savannah or standard room, which are still super nice. But how did that go where you were able to have, with that many people, to have that villa? And, was that, obviously you were doing it, I think, on points, but still, how did that end up working out for you?
It was phenomenal. It was the reason we bought into Disney Vacation Club. We've had our membership for a couple of years now, but we've really only ever stayed in studios, and it's only been like short little trips here and there. So we knew that we were saving up our points. We were banking up. We were saving. We were going to do this for the family for this big trip. And it was exactly what I had hoped for. It was everything that I had hoped for and wanted, because having the 2 bedrooms made it so much easier with the girls, and it gave my parents some space, where they could chill out and do their own thing, and having that living room area worked out. We also have friends that live down in the area, in the Winter Garden area. And because we had that nice big living room kitchen area, they were actually able to come and visit us and hang out with us right in there. And we didn't have to worry about, oh, don't mind our beds. That's a big mess. And don't look at the bathroom. And so it really felt like our home away from home. We were able to take advantage of all of the space. And of course, the balcony and the Savannah view in the morning just is, it's uncomparable. It was excellent.
That's something I would like to do at some point, not buy a vacation club, but is to stay at one of those villas, because, like we've done this, the standard rooms are nice and everything, but like you said, you get to a point after, like, if you're going to stay longer than a few days, after 3 or 4 days, you're just like, I want to sit somewhere, but at this table and at the bed. Is there anywhere else I can stand in this room? Or I'll go on a little balcony, basically. But I still love the resort. In general, we've talked about this last time, but if someone was looking to stay there, whether it's in that or not, you mentioned too, though, the possible issues with the buses that one night, which could happen at any resort. Do you find that, I don't mind the distance, but we did stay at the Swan this last time and were able to walk to places, and I was like, oh my, this is really nice. So did the distance feel longer when you're going with the family and having that? Is that a negative at all, having to kind of get, especially in the Magic Kingdom, get there that way?
I didn't really notice it or think of it that way. But again, that could have just been because the bus service for when we were going to those parks was great. It wasn't like we had to wait 30 minutes and then have a 30-minute drive. So it wasn't as though we needed to plan an hour to get to the Magic Kingdom or to get to, any other further out place on property. So we were fortunate that the transportation folks were working in our favor for those parks at that time. But we had that other experience where we're waiting over an hour for a Disney Springs bus. Was the one kink in the armor where you wouldn't think you'd ever wait that long, especially for a bus for Disney Springs. You'd think they would keep coming, but that was the one transportation sticking point. But everything else coming from Animal Kingdom Lodge, distance really wasn't much of a factor for us.
Yeah, we've always had great experiences there in general, just with when we've done the buses where, you wait your 15 minutes or whatever, but it hasn't been too bad. But I know there's always exceptions. Well, I'm curious for you too, like as you're looking ahead, like what is like another trip? That's funny to ask, like when you've just done 2 trips, like, so what are you doing next? Because I know they're not cheap, but what are you looking forward to kind of in the future, whether it's this fall or next year or whenever?
the best way to get over the Disney blues is to book another trip, right? So that's one of the things that we do all the time. The next trip that we actually have booked is we're going on the Disney Dream in November. This is a rescheduled cruise from our anniversary. So a year ago, we took a trip that was going to kind of take the place of that anniversary cruise that we missed out. But we haven't been on a cruise in 7 years, and it's been something that I've really wanted to do. And so the family all came together, and this was actually a birthday gift for me earlier this year, was to be able to get on this cruise. So very much looking forward to celebrating the culmination of fall and entering the holiday season by heading out and getting down to Miami for a 4-night cruise on the Disney Dream.
Excellent. Well, I have not been on a Disney cruise. My wife gets pretty serious motion sickness, and just we haven't, really, it's not like we really, I mean, I know those cruises or ships are basically like cities at sea. They're giant, but still isn't that excited about it. But I mean, I know you haven't been in a while, but like maybe what are you excited to do on this? That's what I would ask.
I'm very excited because I have been on the Disney Magic, the Disney Wonder, and the Disney Fantasy, but not the Dream. So prior to the Wish it becoming into the fleet, the Dream was kind of the last ship in the arsenal that I haven't had the chance to go on. So very much looking forward to getting on the Dream and experiencing it as a new ship, as well as getting back to Castaway Cay. I mean, Castaway Cay is just heaven on earth. And I'm really looking forward to just spending some time on the island again.
Well, I'll just live vicariously there. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe someday we'll do it. Well, Lauren, I'm curious. I have a series of just extra kind of fun questions that I'm going to ask you. Is that okay? Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm ready. Fire.
Okay. So now that you've done the most recent additions, of these 4 attractions that have recently been added in the last few years, how would you rank these 4, 1 to 4? They are Runaway Railway, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Cosmic Rewind, and Rise of the Resistance. How would you rate these 1 to 4?
I had my ranking ready to go, and then you threw Rise in there, and now you've blown my mind. Okay, Rise has to be number 1 because it really is the next level of what I would hope theme park entertainment is going to be. It is so immersive, and it is so involved, and it's not just a 5-minute ride. It's a 20-minute experience. And you can go on Rise of the Resistance over and over and over again, and you're always going to find something new. You're always going to notice another little detail or another little nugget, and it's really, I'm just so impressed. It's the ride that leaves me so impressed every time I get on it. It's just amazing. So I've got to put Rise for number 1. After that, might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I really love Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and I would put that as number 2. It's so enjoyable. It's just, I have a real issue with the reliance on screens and projections. And I feel as though Mickey and Minnie's is how projections and screens and things should be used. When you're talking about a 2-dimensional cartoon and jumping into it and trying to bring it to life, that feels more authentic of a use of those projections to me than other applications. So I find Mickey and Minnie's really entertaining, and I love that I can go on it with my girls, and I would gladly go on that ride over and over again. So I would make that number 2. And then I would put Cosmic Rewind as number 3. Love it. Again, great ride. Maybe just a touch. Maybe I'm just still scared of it myself, even though I've been on it 3 times, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great ride, a lot of rewritability. I had 3 different songs when I went on it each time too. So I enjoyed September the most of the 3 songs that I had. Mostly, I just love Earth, Wind, and Fire though too. I don't think you can go wrong with them. So I'd put that as 3. And then as much as I enjoyed Ratatouille, the first time I rode Ratatouille, I got terribly motion sick.
Mhm.
It was very, very hard. And I had to actually close my eyes or look at the floor just to keep myself grounded. That was another one, though, that the second time through, I wrote it when I had gotten a good night's sleep. I was much more hydrated, so I was in a healthier state, and rode Ratatouille the second time with my family and actually really, really enjoyed it. That would be my 4th out of 4 for those rides.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I have not ridden Cosmic Rewind, but the other ones, I also really enjoyed Runaway Railway more than I expected. I mean, I thought it would be cute. You know, we like the newer Mickey cartoons, but I was really impressed with just the whole thing, like where the queue, the screen blows away. And even though I had heard about that, I totally forgot when we were in there. And I was like, oh. And then just the way, like you said, the way that you don't feel like, that's the thing that got me. I mean, with Remy's, and also I mentioned my wife, Erin, she got very motion sick in that ride and was like really, like you said, the same experience. And I did not think, oh, this is a ride where you sit and look at screens that depict motion the whole time. Because I'm thinking, kids ride, oh, it's going to be fine with trackless ride vehicles. Oh, no. And I think, again, that one falls a little prey to what you described where, I mean, I love the physical sets. I love that area.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little bit too much of sit and stare and look at a screen. But, and yeah, Rise of the Resistance only was able to ride it once, but would definitely, and I would pay for it again too, is not I know Remy's isn't a pay thing now, but is not the case with Remy's as an example. So I'm with you on these. I would not say it's a hot take to put that number 2. I think generally, I mean, some people may say, oh, Cosmic Rewind should be 2 or whatever, but I think number 1 and number 4 are pretty, I mean, for most people, obviously there are exceptions, is pretty clear cut. So I'm with you on that. Okay, let me get to a few more really important questions. Next week is the D23 Expo in a little over a week, where Disney is going to make all their big announcements, hopefully about what's happening after Tron, after Moana, everything else. Is there anything in particular, like when Josh D'Amaro comes onto the stage and says, I have great announcements, is there something you really would love to hear? It can be off the wall or it can be something we sort of know.
So here's my conjecture about D23, because if I'm recalling accurately, the last earnings call that they just said, they were talking a whole lot about expenditures, like lots and lots of money that are coming in. And typically those have been spent on the parks. So I'm really hopeful that we're actually going to hear, my hope anyway, I don't know if it's necessarily that we're going to hear it, but my hope is that some of those things that have kind of fallen by the wayside are finally going to get some movement. Maybe it's going to be, I would love to see something with Mary Poppins show up in the UK pavilion. I would love to see EPCOT get more of the money that they were trying to put into it from D23 in 2019. Just more of those things that the EPCOT experience was actually promoting. I really want to see more of that actually come to life and fruition for EPCOT. So that's probably my biggest hope. Of course, I'm also hoping that they're going to announce when Tron's going to open, but
yes.
You know, I know that that's coming. It's built. They're testing it all the time. So I have a feeling that one's more likely to happen than how they're going to use their expenditure money at EPCOT. But, you know, we'll see what happens. But a dream is a wish the heart makes. So I'm dreaming and I'm wishing for EPCOT that it starts seeing some more of the money that they were intending to give it.
Well, Lauren, I'm sure they'll give us a very specific soon or... Yeah. Exactly. Early 2023 or spring or something that could be almost anything. That's what we will probably get with Tron. No, I agree with you. I would love to know. They also mentioned a film for China and EPCOT that then they just kind of forgot that they mentioned, which I've heard is basically finished, but there might be some issues with China or whatever. I don't know. This was years ago, the last I heard it, but I'd love to hear about that. The Play Pavilion, if it's going to happen, if it's not, I know they're not going to come up and say, we're not doing this. That's not what we're going to hear, but I would love to know. And also they mentioned an Avengers attraction at California Adventure that then they said is on hold. So I guess we'll see. I don't know. That's something I would like to know more about too. So that's
exactly. I think only Josh D'Amaro can tell us at this point. So
maybe he's reading a script. He doesn't know.
That's true. I mean, he might not know until he reads it either. So
Oh, we're doing this. No, I know he's chairman of the park, so I would hope that he's aware. Okay, couple more here. So this is more of a sillier one. But so let's say Disney comes to you and says, we're going to add back your favorite extinct attraction, whatever that is. We're going to add it back. But in order to do that, we need more money. So we're going to remove one of these. Which one of these would you be okay removing to get your favorite ever attraction that is no longer there? This is the premise. And whatever that is, you can tell me, but I'm not trying to put you on the spot there. But would you be okay losing either Space Mountain, Spaceship Earth, or the Tower of Terror to get your favorite extinct attraction?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a mean one, Dan. That's tough.
Well, I couldn't just say, hey, are you okay losing Triceratops Spin? That doesn't, you don't lose anything.
That's no, fair. So I guess if I were to pick one of those to lose, Spaceship Earth is definitely not going anywhere because that's quintessential. That must stay. If I were to lose one of them, it would probably depend on the day, whether I pick Tower of Terror or I pick Space Mountain. At the moment, I would lean towards Space Mountain just because Tron is there. So it feels as though Tron might be the next evolution of what, Space Mountain was intended to be in the first place. But Space Mountain also has a nostalgia, a classic that goes all the way, goes much further back. I don't know. I guess if I had to pick one right now, I would say Space Mountain. Just because I love Tower of Terror so much. It is a blast. It's so detailed. It's one of the last, it feels like that was another generation of Disney park rides. And as great as Space Mountain is, I wish that they would put more money into it to upkeep it the way that I think it should be. Yeah. So if I had to pick one at this point in time, it would be Space Mountain. And that would be my commit.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I probably figured. I was trying to think, because I could have put in like Haunted Mansion or Pirates. I'm like, okay, we got to put some, because even I love Spaceship Earth, but there's a few things that could be tweaked. So I was like, well, maybe that one. Tower of Terror, no. But I love Spaceship Earth, but there's a few things. Okay. Well, I'm glad we covered that. That was a really important question. Okay. So if Disney was deciding, okay, we're going to add another park, would you rather they added a fifth gate to Walt Disney World or added an entirely new resort with a park in the middle of the country somewhere, possibly a place closer to us, maybe?
I think I'd actually prefer to see the fifth gate.
Wow.
I think I would. And, again, maybe that's a hot take too. And part of the appeal is traveling away. So I like the idea of getting away and going to a destination. So I would go with the fifth gate.
That's interesting. I like it though, because it surprised me because, I know, you don't live that close to Orlando, but the idea of it being, because if there was, like you see it with people that, moved to Florida. Some of them are, just as much, but others will be like, yeah, it's so close. It's kind of like there's all these people and I can't drive on the highway close to them. So, maybe there's something to that. I don't think they're adding a fifth gate. I think the odds of it happening are or even a third to California are very low. It just costs so much money. Yeah. I don't even know what it would cost to create like a Magic Kingdom level park, like $10 billion. I don't know, something insane,
right.
To do it. So, interesting. Well, I think that is good for those types of questions because, that's really what we're here for, to ask hypotheticals that will never happen. That's right. What I try to do. So finally, though, before we finish, I'm curious for you. I know you've started working as a travel planner, not as your primary job, but as kind of an extra thing. Has that changed? Like when you go visit the parks as a family, does it change your approach at all? That you're doing that? Like, do you approach the parks differently or be looking for different things? Or how does that impact it all? Or even what you saw maybe on your training, did that change how you approach it at all?
I actually don't think that it does because first and foremost, I feel like I'm just a huge Disney nerd and a big fan. And I really do it for me. I mean, I go to the parks because I really enjoy it and I enjoy being with my family. And I do travel planning. Again, I enjoy it. I like planning trips. I like mapping out hypotheticals and trying to strategize. I mean, some people get geeky about football plays or sports plays and things like. I get geeky about, okay, how are we going to work this day? And if we're going to fit in all of these things, how do I want to do this? Like, that's my kind of strategizing. I really enjoy that. And I enjoy hearing about all the new things and figuring out how that could change my approach the next time I go to the parks. So as much as I enjoy doing the travel planning, and I do that now, most of what I do is just word of mouth from a lot of people who know what a huge geek I am and how much I really enjoy this, because I just enjoy doing it for me and enjoy planning it. So it hasn't impacted anything as much as I might have thought otherwise.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm somebody who I may complain about, like, it's so stressful to plan, but then I'm like creating spreadsheets and I'm like, oh, well, if we do it this way, how will this go and stuff? So part of my brain wants a little bit of that, I think. So I think I'm with you a little bit. Well, this has been great, Lauren. And I'm curious too, though, if people want to follow like your future travels or what you're doing, are there good places they should go online or to follow you and check out what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. I have my Instagram is L Staniszewski Travel. And my Facebook page for my travel agent business is the same. It's just facebook.com/L Staniszewski Travel. And I tend to post more when I'm on my trips on Instagram than I do on Facebook, just because I try not to flood people's Facebook feeds. But I know that if you're on Instagram, you're going there for pictures and videos and that kind of media. So I would say if that's what you're looking for, Instagram's probably the best place to go. But I'm always, again, up for a chat and trip planning or trip debriefing or trip sharing. Whatever you're up for, my Disney nerd is happy to comply.
Yeah, well, all you did today was make me want to go and ride Cosmic Rewind and go see Rise of the Resistance and go spend a lot of money to stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge and get a minivan. I mean, all these things. I'm just, money's just flying out the window right now as we talk, but exciting things. So I appreciate it. Well, Lauren, thanks again. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. My pleasure. Anytime.
If you would like to help support the Tomorrow Society podcast, there are several ways you can do so. First is to become an official member of the Tomorrow Society through Patreon, where you leave a small monthly contribution and get access to some really cool perks, including extra episodes. Go to patreon.com/Tomorrow Society to learn more. You can also buy me a Dole Whip. And I don't mean take me to the St. Louis Zoo or Walt Disney World to do it. That is a one-time contribution to help out just a little bit if you enjoy the show. Big thanks to Melanie, who did just that recently. Go to tomorrowsociety.com/Dole Whip to learn more. You can also leave 5-star rating or review at Apple Podcasts. And I wanted to give a big shout out to my most recent review from Gopher Farm, who really loves Six Flags Great America. It is their hometown park. Loved Raging Bull and really enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much. Love those reviews and glad that you enjoy Great America because I had a lot of fun at that park. If you want to get a hold of me, shoot me an email, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. Next time, I will be talking about my reactions to the announcements. Hopefully there'll be a lot of them at the D23 Expo. The parks presentation is Sunday, September 11th. Can't wait to see what happens there. And that will be out next week. Can you believe it? Thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you again next time. So I'm with you on these. I don't think it's a hot take to put Runaway Railway. My goodness, I struggle to say Runaway Railway so much. I would not put the railway. I would not. This is why I edit myself. This is why I do it. I'm going to take a breath.